Dan Schauble recently got the chance to interview Gary Vee for his podcast, and one of the questions actually went over Veve and what Gary's thoughts were on that. So today we're going to talk about it, understand that a little bit more, and what we can learn moving forward with this. So let's get started. Welcome in everyone, my name is Andy, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come and watch this video on the channel. Just before we get going, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel because you're enjoying the content, you want to learn more about the NFT and crypto space, I'd love to have you a part of this community. Dan recently had the chance to interview Gary Vee, and on the podcast it was the 5 questions where they mostly discussed Gary Vee's new book, 12 and a half. But Dan slipped a little bit of Veve into there, asking him what he thought on the basis of the NFT projects that will survive for the long run. Now in the interview, Gary talked about the first ever Spider-Man being on Veve, with Gary mentioning whether or not the public will actually accept Spider-Man's first ever NFT from Veve. Now we did talk a little bit about the closed ecosystem and not yet on the Ethereum chain, and that maybe in 12 years time Solana could be the top of the game, with them releasing partnerships with Marvel and releasing a Spider-Man NFT that the public could accept as the first. Of course, Dan didn't have that much time to discuss and go in depth about Veve, and I'm sure Gary Vee actually understands it as he's had a talk with the founders of Veve themselves. But it is interesting to see how Gary feels about that and understands overall what the NFT market can do. The interesting thing is he said that he doesn't know if Spider-Man's first NFT or all the first NFTs on Veve are actually going to be accepted as that, because the mass adoption has to actually accept as what is the first and what it is. I can understand where he's coming from, as there are some things that have happened in the past, with Randy mentioning that some of the first Pokemon cards weren't actually the ones that are the most valuable. Some people didn't actually accept the first ever cards as the first ever cards for Pokemon. You can see where that sort of vision comes into play, where it might not actually be accepted by the masses that this is the first. However, I just can't really see it being that way with how much Veve have got going for them, the partnerships that they're making, and also the move to Immutable coming soon. The other thing to take note of is that Gary is also in the NFT business, and in a sense, he is a bit of a competitor. Gary is a very business-minded person and very empathetic towards a lot of other things. The absolute amount of hate this man gets and the amount of love as well is incredible, but he's always empathetic towards those who do not enjoy his product and do not enjoy what he creates. But we can't deny that Gary isn't one of the most successful businessmen in the world, and he has an understanding as to what people want and how to create a culture feeling behind his actual products. Gary does work with a lot of other different companies that are potentially in competition, and Gary actually has his own NFTs bringing out with his 12 and a half, the book that is coming out recently. If you order 12 copies, I believe you're going to get an NFT that's going to be related to a game, or that's what we've known so far. And also he's got his V-Friends that he's already built within VaynerMedia. So he is in competition in a sense with every other NFT project that is there. Gary also offers sort of paid advertisements, so it's not something he's just going to say, yes, I love Veve, when he's maybe not benefiting from it. And there's a lot of different perspectives that we can take. There's a lot of different insights that we can take from this interview. But again, you know, Dan only had 30 minutes to talk with him and he just slipped in Veve here and there, so we can't really take it all at face value. Also some speculation from others that Gary could potentially actually be in partnership with Veve, because he has had a conversation with the owners but has signed some contracts, not really told to discuss it just yet. So who knows, that might even be something we have no idea about, because none of us had an idea that Disney was coming when it was. So it wouldn't surprise me if something like that was actually the case. It's always interesting to see how people react when it comes to this, but all the comments I've actually seen so far were really good in support of Veve itself. Gary may have just not understood the direction that Veve is going, or may have not done the research in order to do so. I mean, I doubt that Gary does have 10 hours each day to go and research different types of projects. You know, you have other people researching it for him. He also does his own stuff, because he will be a busy guy and he will have a lot to do in regards to VaynerMedia and all the other stuff he does on the sidelines. Gary did mention about the closed ecosystem that Veve has right now, with Dan correcting him, saying it was going to move, but it will be really interesting to see how it moves forward and how people move, because Gary was one of the first ones to talk about social media and Web 2 and how this is going to change the world. He also mentioned that when he initially was getting invested in Uber, he didn't actually invest in it for 2 chances that he'd had before he got in. Now, I'm sure he made a lot of money when he did actually get in, but the fact of the matter is, one person's opinion isn't going to change sort of the whole culture behind it and what Veve is actually building. I hope people don't take it as a sort of dead set, this is the answer, Veve's not going anywhere and people are never going to see Veve's NFTs as actual NFTs, or the mass adoption is never going to happen because of that. I think it's just interesting to hear different people's opinions who are extremely successful. You know, Dan backs Veve and he's been commenting on tons of YouTubers' videos, and he's been talking on social media about it and getting some of his business friends involved. And I've had the opportunity to talk to Dan, and it's incredible to see his insight and his level of knowledge that he actually has in the industry that he is in. So having someone like that who truly understands understands the depth of a company's progression is something that I've been really enjoying to learn from. And I know hearing Gary's opinion and other really successful entrepreneurs' opinion is going to be a great insight to how these people think and why they think the way that they do. Gary said he had 2 opportunities to actually invest in Uber before he did. Just goes to show that these people don't always make the right decision. Sometimes they have to be convinced in different ways. Sometimes they have to process it in their own way. It's always great to see how they think about this and how they actually move forward with some of the investments that they do make. Gary also does know about Immutable, as he has tweeted out about it before and is in partnership with them in regards to the TikTok moments that has been announced and released on Immutable so far. So he definitely does know that Veve are coming to them, and again, as I said, he has had a conversation with the owner, so he knows what Veve is and he knows what it's about. I just really love that Dan was able to bring it up in the podcast episode and talk a lot about it as well as his book, because it's so interesting to see how this NFT space is actually going to move and how people are going to react to it when different things happen. I cannot deny that Gary is potentially one of the best marketers in the world. Being able to make people buy 12 books to get this one NFT just shows the level of dedication that people have. And I'll happily admit that I bought 36 books for this to follow the true collector's mindset of buy one to sell, buy one to keep, and buy one to do whatever the hell you want with. I'm not someone as well who absolutely adores Gary with everything he says and follows him like a cult, but I do enjoy his opinion because he is so opinionated with who he is. It's always important to have that in different spaces and have people from completely different sides of the spectrum and what they're thinking and how their insights actually work and how they move forward with what they do, and why I really like that sort of dead set opinion, and he knows what he wants and he knows what he needs, because you get that level of insight from that person and you have a completely opposite side from another, and it really brings it together to give that education a boost, and you can learn a lot from people like that. Most unfortunately have a sort of dead set mindset that if someone disagrees with them, then they disagree with everything that they do and you can never learn from them. But if you just keep an open mind, you can learn from everything and you can understand why he's saying what he's saying. You know, he's being skeptical that maybe Veve won't be adopted by everyone else. Maybe people won't actually care that Spider-Man's first NFT was on Veve if it's not accepted by more people. And maybe Solana comes out as top player in 12 years from now, where they're going to have a partnership with Marvel and they are going to be able to have the first Spider-Man that is adopted by everyone. But personally, I feel that Veve has worked up a foundation that has been really solid compared to most other companies. What I've seen from being in this space for the last 7 months or so is that most companies offer what they say they're going to do. So we are going to do this and want the money to come into them before they actually jump into it. Whereas Veve done it in a different way. They built their app up, they started the drop system, and then started to say, hey, listen, this is how we're going to move forward with it. So yes, they still did have good money coming in the beginning, but remember, things like Risso and Todd didn't sell out right away. It wasn't that in the beginning. So they did make sure to build the foundations before starting to allow more people to come into the platform, to have it run with more people on the platform. And we were confirmed with 300,000 new downloads and over 1 million active users on Veve after Disney Golden Moments and Decon had happened. That does show that this steady growth and this incline has been really good for Veve to not only build up a great community, make the foundations even stronger with what it is. Veve has shown time and time again that they are willing to play the long game and are playing the long game. And I think that's what makes it different to these other 98% of projects who say they're going to do something but want the money before they actually do it. This business right now is in a sort of bubble and it will burst at some point, and it's important to understand why your investments are in a particular place and who you can trust with your investments when the market goes stale. If we do follow the same cycles, we're going to be ending up in a bear market for a couple years after this, and if we're convicted in our plan and understand that Veve are going to be working continuously not only to make it about the drops but the Veveverse that's going to be mass adopted and we hope is going to be mass adopted, then the opinion of one person with a company that's so early shouldn't really deter you from doing anything, collecting anything, buying Omi or anything like that. Me personally, I love hearing Gary's opinion and I love hearing Dan's thoughts on the subject as a whole. It's honestly great to have different perspectives from things because you need people to be critical, you need people to think outside the box, and you need people like that in order to put their opinion forward and see how you can adapt your learning from them. But what's your thoughts on that interview? I'll leave the link down below for you to go and check out, and I would love to have a conversation about what you thought on Gary's talk. I know the video on the screen right now will be something you'll love to watch. Have a fantastic day.